how will your administration, if you're mayor, improve training and placement, internship and work experience opportunities within the region's high growth sectors? And what is your vision for partnerships with key collaborators such as labor unions and the business community to try to expand those opportunities?
So I talked earlier about, and the other question about it, is reestablishing an education cabinet. And so I want to make sure that we have pretty regular meetings of all the educational institutions. And as I said, I'd add on a layer of particularly the job training programs, because my goal is for every young person in Oakland to have a job when they get out of school. And so I think that is going to be a key component of it. You specifically talked about internships. I think that we used to have mayors that met with the business chambers and basically said, you got to adopt a school. And that's what I plan to do. I plan to go back, and unfortunately recently we've had mayors who either only wanted everything to go to 2 charter schools, or who had, I think, very big visions but didn't get to the implementation point, and particularly in this. And I plan to just personally do that. I can remember being, right before I was on the school board, Lionel Wilson being at one of these big chamber lunches, or maybe it was a big Marcus Foster, when Marcus Foster was much stronger, where you had leaders from the entire business community there, and he basically said, we've got to help the schools, we've got to do this. And I think it was to save the sports program at that time. But I think you need to use that to encourage businesses, big or small, to take high school interns and to mentor them. If you've seen any of my campaign literature, you also know that I have this goal to have 2,000 new mentors in the Oakland Public Schools for the kids who are most in trouble. And those kids are some of the same kids that are going to have the most problems finding jobs. And so who am I looking at? Why did I pick 2,000? Did I just pick it out of my hat? No. There are about 500 kids who get arrested in Oakland Public Schools, who are in the Oakland Public Schools every year. So I'm assuming those are kids who need a little extra help. There's about 1,200 chronically truant kids. In 12 to 1,400, depends on the year, depends on who you count and what the cutoff point is. But chronically truant kids, and for me that is kids who are going to miss 20 days of school. And we know if you miss about 20 days of school, you're unlikely to keep up with your grade level. You're more likely than later to drop out. So anything we can do to keep kids going to school and not fall behind is pretty critical. And then in addition to that, we have about 300 kids who age out of foster care every year and literally become homeless at age 18. A lot of the kids that we've been working with were sexually exploited. A lot of the kids who are involved in gangs are often kids who are in foster care. And so that's why I picked 2,000, because I figured if we can get volunteers for the kids who are most in trouble in the schools, that graduation rate will go way up, my crime rate will go way down. So it's a combination of factors. But I also think, particularly for the foster cares, having that help at that critical time of making that transition. And I've also been fighting for transitional housing, and we were hoping at the statewide level, but looks at the budget cuts, it's dead in the water, to get foster care kids who stay in job training or educational programs support through at least the age of 21, 22. And that's long-term solution, but that's not apparently going to happen with the current crisis. And I think it's unfortunate, because that's a better investment, because I think if I can get foster kids through school, they're less likely to be involved in crime, and they won't end up in a California prison where I'm going to spend about the amount to send someone to Stanford with all the thrills, about $60,000, $70,000 a year. And so supporting foster kids through the education years up to 21, to me, would be a great investment in this area. The other thing is to make sure that the city itself takes interns. And I always use this very simple example. I now have, and no insult to my gardeners, but a lot of my gardeners only know how to mow lawns. I would love to get somebody from the Castlemont Landscape Academy, if it's still there, who would come and intern with me and then go to Merit Horticultural, and I would hire them during the summertime, and then when they graduate, to hire them to be gardeners for the city of Oakland. All right, as I said earlier, we're going to lose about a third of our workforce because they're boomers, and I think they're going to retire, although they might not, given what may happen with the economy. But that's 1,700 jobs alone that may happen, turn over in the time while I'm mayor. And so yeah, I think that I need to model it too as an employer, but that I think that we need to build an expectation and a system within the employers here in Oakland to take up more of the internships in particular, because we know if a kid has an internship, they're more likely to graduate from high school and therefore more likely to do well.
Thank you. So I definitely hear the emphasis on the publicly funded side and on the opportunities with the stimulus projects that are coming. Do you have some ideas on the business community side where the promising opportunities may be for young people to expand into jobs?
Well, I thought I talked about the business, but I actually don't think I talked enough about the stimulus, so let me talk about that. Because the city, when there's a project that involves either city funds or federal funds, or when it's on our land, we can put in stipulations and we can negotiate those, including what we call first hire. That is, that jobs be offered to Oaklanders first. And secondly, that a certain percentage of the jobs must go to Oakland residents. Now, I just happen to be someone who also, in the last recession, in what was called a CEDAR job, and you're way too young to remember that, but these were federally funded jobs with agencies. I happened to work for Women in Apprenticeship. And we got a lot of women into non-traditional, higher-paying, blue-collar jobs. And a lot of the women that I got in apprenticeships never got their union card because a lot of the journeymanship in the unions often now takes 4 or 5 years. And if there's unemployment and you didn't work for, let's say, you work 6 months and you're off 6 months, you never quite get there to the end. And when years later, when I was talking to one of the women that I helped, who is now actually doing very well and is a union official, she told me very few of the people in her cohort group made it through because it just was too hard. They would work for a while and whatever to make it all the way through the 5 years. They just didn't make it. So one of the things I think that the city can do is develop, particularly at the Army base, which is going to be a 10, 20-year project. But in other places in the city, develop a few skills centers where both we make sure that we help people in the pre-apprenticeship program. So Cypress Mandela has been very successful that way. Cypress Mandela is now accepted as a pre-apprenticeship program in a lot of the unions. So if you go for Cypress Mandela, you don't have to do a pre-apprentice. They just accept you in to start an apprenticeship. And I'd like to build on that. We need more than one center because there's different kinds of jobs, different kinds of skills. And as you know, the mayor is currently relooking at our current workforce board and how we're using those monies. So there's probably monies even that we can refocus and reconcentrate, and I think that that's going to be critical. Secondly, we can make the unions make sure that as long as they're working, that these people keep working within Oakland. If they're Oakland residents, there's always between the airport connector, the new construction that's already been approved, but people are just waiting for the recession to end to get their loans, and like Oak Tonight, and the Army base, you're looking at a couple of $1 billion of construction over the next 5 to 10 years, minimally, a couple of billion, that's with a B. So there should be ability to have a continuity for the people, at least in the trades, that is the unions, the construction unions, to get all the way through. And our requirements are 25 to 50% of the jobs on those projects. But the question is, if we don't make sure that there are people who are applicants and that they're not tracked during that time, then we could lose this opportunity. And why is it so important? Because particularly in the trades, we're talking about jobs that a lot of our young people who are formerly incarcerated or back out on the streets. The trades is very forgiving on those issues. As long as you stay straight, you're not high on the job, and you show up on time, they'll give a lot of people second chances. And so we need to do that. In addition to that, we need to make sure that young people get that, and even in construction, you have to have your GED. I was at San Quentin about a month ago, and I was talking to a group of young men who work on the San Quentin newspaper, and they've been following Measure Y, and I think this is only the second toughest form. Theirs was the toughest because they've been on the internet, they've been studying the politics, they've been studying people's positions, they were studying Measure Y, and they asked me as next mayor, can you make sure I can get a job? And I said, well, I can do my best, but can you make sure that you have your GED before you leave? And so people were looking at, I said, you know, if you're anything like our other projects and pilots that we had when I was a school board member, when we were out at Santa Rita, maybe 50% of you don't read. And many of you don't read because you're either dyslexic or have some other learning disability. It doesn't mean that you're not smart, but this is the time not to be proud and not to cover that up. You know, we have people in our literacy programs and tutors who specialize in helping young men, and unfortunately it's mostly men, helping people who are dyslexic or have other reading problems learn. And you need to do that because you need to get your GED, because none of the unions will take anybody who at least doesn't have their GED, and that's why I'm so worried about adult ed. So we have to look at that whole continuum. We've got to make sure that people have that real opportunity, they have realistic expectations. But there is this opportunity, and so we need someone, we need contract compliance, and we need a set of people, I think, among the projects that will monitor and make sure that we don't waste this opportunity, because for thousands of young men in this city and young women, this will be their best chance to get a high-paying blue-collar job, and that's critical, because we're talking here maybe 5,000 to 10,000 new jobs.